Good afternoon and welcome to the Midday News. Here's what we have in the bulletin. Health Minister says calls for resignation of Health Ministry representatives unwarranted. Rastafarian community wants written policy in a bid to stop discrimination. And later in sports, JFF temporarily suspends winger Leon Bailey. Thank you for joining us. I'm Shane Masters and here are the details. Carpet bombing strategy. That's how Health Minister Dr. Christopher Tufton describes what he claims are coordinated attacks on civil servants and volunteers by the opposition People's National Party. Speaking at Wednesday's post-cabinet press briefing, Dr. Tufton says in the past week there have been at least 8 or 9 press releases calling for the resignation of a Chief Medical Officer, Dr. Jacqueline Bisesa McKenzie, Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Health, Dunstan Bryan, and 2 board chairs. Dr. Tufton says he is disappointed and condemns the unwarranted attacks on public servants.
The opposition has clearly decided that their best hope for political office is to pursue what I will classify as a carpet bombing strategy. In other words, throw as much mud as you can imagine, as you can conjure up in your imagination, and hope that something will stick. It is, in my view, a morally bankrupt strategy that should not be supported or encouraged.
He further adds that it was revealed by his source that the opposition also plans to circulate images of the state of public health facilities in the coming days.
I don't intend to fall into the trap of responding to every outlandish claim made by the opposition. The reality is they keep moving the goalposts. At first it was missing ventilators. Then it became ventilators not working. Then it became ICU and high dependency units. The goalpost keeps moving in order, frankly speaking, to continue their agenda of maligning and discrediting an entire system, including our civil servants.
Still at the post-cabinet press briefing, Transport Minister Darrell Vaz says he's yet to get a formal report on the fire Saturday at the Jamaica Urban Transit Company's JUTC depot in Spanish Town, St. Catherine. Now, Mr. Vaz says he received intelligence from sources regarding Saturday night's blaze. He says this will guide the implementation of safety and security measures depending on the findings.
I do have a meeting today at 2:30 with the Deputy Commissioner in charge of crime and the management of JUTC. And it's not specific to this particular incident, but it's ongoing issues, security issues within JUTC. High among them is the continued theft of diesel oil. So I'm sure that I'll get a report in due course. I don't want to preempt my own thoughts and intelligence, but bottom line is that something is not right and it needs to be dealt with, and it needs to be dealt with once and for all. And that meeting today will take me in a path in terms of what support can I get from the police and, if necessary, the military to really put a clamp down on what's taking place at JUTC.
The Rastafarian community is demanding that the government develop a written policy for its members at places of work and school where they say they continue to face discrimination. Secretary of the Rastafari Coral Guns Benevolent Society, Pamela Williams, who made a similar call last year, says this code of conduct will be part of the reparations owed to the community. Ms. Williams says it will cover the wearing of locks and vaccination for admission to schools. The issue of vaccination, to which Rastafarians are opposed, was raised by Culture Minister Olivia Grange during her sectoral debate presentation in Parliament yesterday. Ms. Williams, who was a guest on the morning agenda on Power 106, says the discrimination will continue without a written code with sanctions and public education.
So we need a code of conduct to be developed and publicized, put in all the different police stations and public spaces, so that persons who have been socialized over the years, to discriminate and to look down upon Rastafari will recognize that no, this is government policy, that this needs to be addressed, and then there needs to be sanctions as well for those who do not want to go by this code of conduct, so that you don't leave for example, the matter of accepting students in school with love to an individual principal, but rather it is a policy, and if any principal wants to go against that policy, then sanctions would be applied.
The standoff between the Manchester Municipal Corporation and the Mandaville Businessman over access to a drain has been resolved. Chairman of the MMC, Donovan Mitchell, says after a meeting between the two parties, access was granted and workmen from the MMC were able to clear the contentious blocked drain, which had been causing flooding along the busy Ward Avenue every time it rained heavily. Mr. Mitchell, who disclosed information at a PNP divisional meeting on Saturday, said he remained at the premises Friday until the work was completed. Last Sunday, workmen from the MMC who visited the property to clear the drain could not gain access, following which the MMC threatened an injunction against the businessman. Flooding along Ward Avenue has been a long-standing and frustrating problem for business people and commuters for several years. There's a call this afternoon for better planning of town centres. It comes from Executive Director of the National Solid Waste Management Authority, NSWMA, Audley Gordon. More in this report. According to NSWMA Executive Director Audley Gordon, due to the congestion of some town centres, it's more difficult for his team to adequately address the garbage concerns. For instance, he notes the town of Brownstown, St. Anne,
where we definitely need to meet as parish council, as a chamber of commerce. We have to sit down, we have to look at where is the appropriate location to build the garbage house so that the trucks can access it without impeding commerce. We don't want to impede commerce, but we do have big trucks and we have to get to the garbage in order to remove it.
He says the issue is a chicken and egg situation, but notes that it is the situation island-wide.
It is not a Brownstone problem. It's a problem with how we structure our communities, how we structure our commercial centers, where we put the garbage receptacles, and an understanding also of the public that this is an essential service.
Another concern for Mr. Gordon is the mentality of some Jamaicans to dispose of their garbage at designated no-dumping sites.
We have seen several places, and I could name them, where we have erected no dumping sign, only for them to be pulled down or people dump at the feet of the no dumping sign. Now, how can you build country around that level of slackness? We have to move people back to a place where dumping, dirtying up the place is not cool.
In the meantime, Mr. Gordon says the agency will be looking at tweaking its operations and resuming night collections in a bid to avoid the congestion in town centres. He, however, notes that the security of the NSWMA's workers remain front and centre. He was speaking to our news team recently as the Northeastern Parks and Market NEPM was on a drive to reduce the backlog of garbage in the parishes of Portland, St. Mary and St. Anne. Chairman of the Manchester Municipal Corporation, Donovan Mitchell, has responded to criticisms by vendors that the corporation is being too hard on them. The corporation, in partnership with the police, have embarked on a drive to remove vendors from sections of the busy Manchester Road. Mr. Mitchell insisted that he and the MMC will ensure that no further vending will take place there.
Some people call me gorilla. I don't care. Some people say me hard, I don't care. But this Manchester roads must go back to the place where we used to have the roads can walk up and down, and we can walk clean in the park.
The vendors have been crying foul, saying they were not provided with an alternative vending space. But Mr. Mitchell says enough space is in the Mandaville Arcade.
We have space in the market because I get a letter from the market. There's 22 spaces in the arcade and there's other spaces. The people must come on the street so that those who are walking on the street, driving on the street, can do so and do their business quietly in the town.
And it's time for a break here on the Midday News, but stay with us. More stories when we return. Welcome back to the Midday News. The Jamaica Fire Brigade, JFB, is reporting an 80% increase in the number of response calls for bushfires this year. According to the Fire Brigade, a total of 40 calls were responded to for the May period. Fire Chief Andrew Wildman was speaking at the St. Mary's Municipal Corporation meeting recently.
I'll further break down the 29 calls that are genuine fires, And of course, 62% were for bush. Bush continues to be the main incidence of fires that we respond to. Bush fires accounted for 62% of the calls. Dwelling house accounted for 14% of the calls. Tree fires, 10%. Rubbish fires, 14%.
There has been a 69% decrease in the number of calls responded to this year compared to May 2023. And it's now time for the Business Minute.
The cost of healthcare and health-related services increased by 4.2% on an annual basis as at May. For the month of May alone, the Statistical Institute of Jamaica Statins says inflation for the health division was up 0.2%, a 0.3% rise in the costs associated with medicines and health products influenced the month's performance. This was linked to higher prices for over-the-counter cough medications and prescribed painkillers. Further afield, the Federal Communications Commission has reached a $1 million settlement with Verizon over 911 call outages in 6 states. The incident occurred in December 2022, affecting Alabama, Florida, Georgia, North Carolina, South Carolina, and Tennessee. The outage lasted for 1 hour and 44 minutes. During that time, hundreds of people were not able to reach 911 on Verizon wireless network. The outage was similar to one that Verizon had experienced just 2 months earlier. The FCC says Verizon violated its rules by failing to deliver 911 calls during the December 2022 outage. To settle the matter, Verizon has agreed to implement a compliance plan and pay a $1 million civil penalty. And that's it for the Business Minute. I'm Carrie Simpson.
And here's a preview of what's coming up in this evening's Health Report.
In this evening's Health Report, we look at medical imaging exam.
I would say the most dangerous part about radiation is if it's excessively used, it can put you at risk for cancer. But that is not common. Us using the radiation to make the diagnosis is more important than not doing the scan.
That's the Health Report in Primetime News at 7. And now for today's Healthy Living tip. If you need a medical imaging exam, be sure to discuss with your doctor. Ask about alternative imaging options. And if you have had multiple imaging exams, be sure to discuss your medical history with your doctor to avoid unnecessary exposure.
Time now for the top regional and international stories.
In the region, the International Monetary Fund has recommended that Grenada establish a more coherent and transparent framework for managing citizenship by investment revenues. The financial agency says Grenada's economy has seen sustained strong growth due to a surge in the CBI revenue, which has resulted in a large budget surplus, an increase in government deposits, and lower public debt. The IMF, which sent a mission to Grenada earlier this month, said the key fiscal policy priorities are to improve the management of these potentially volatile revenues, contain recurrent expenditure, and strengthen public financial management. However, Prime Minister Deacon Mitchell has reportedly rejected the recommendation. On the international scene, WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange has landed in Australia after walking free from a US court. He hugged his wife and father at the airport as a small group of supporters cheered his arrival. He pleaded guilty to one charge in the court in the Northern Mariana Islands on Wednesday, bringing a years-long case to an end. And Dutch Prime Minister Mark Rutte is set to become the next NATO Secretary General. The North Atlantic Treaty Association announced he will take over the position on October 1, when Jens Stoltenberg's 10-year tenure comes to an end. Rutte called the appointment a tremendous honor that he does not take lightly. The Secretary General chairs all of NATO's major committees. He's also the Alliance's principal spokesperson and head of the organization's international staff. And those were the top regional and international stories. I'm Hal Shane Burke.
And we head to a quick break. When we come back, we'll have your midday sports report.